Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk Culture. My name is Sana, and I'm a social worker at Ishar. I'm going to be your facilitator for today, for today's seminar, where we're going to explore the unique mental health needs of the intercultural young generation. Through insightful discussion and shared experience, we hope to identify strategies and solutions to enhance the mental health and resilience of young people growing up in a diverse cultural environment. We're going to start with acknowledgement of country. Ishar acknowledges the Wajak Noongar people as the traditional owners of the land on which we provide our services. We continue to recognize and celebrate the spiritual connection that Noongar people have to country and waters, and pay our respects to Noongar elders past, present, and emerging. And this morning's agenda, we have two keynote speakers from different service providers and one lived experience speaker. So our first speaker today is Rika Asaoka. She's the Director Facilitator of Language and Culture and is an intercultural diversity consultant with over 3 decades of experience. She offers interactive workshops, training, consultancy, and coaching in intercultural diversity management. As a mother of 3 children who grew up in different cultures, she is currently exploring multicultural youth experiences in Australia and third culture children and adults. Her expertise has helped numerous individuals and organizations harness their diversity for better results. With over 1,000 participants from various industries attending her sessions annually, experience practical insights and impactful facilitation with Rika.
Good morning to everyone. Lovely meeting you. And thank you very much for having me to Ishar. And it is always good to listen to others, have conversation, and share our stories and learn from each other. And my name is Rika. As the title shows, I am mother, migrant, and intercultural consultant. As an intercultural consultant, I deliver intercultural competency-related trainings for corporations and organizations, especially focusing on managing the culturally diverse team, how to work more effectively together. That's my main focus. And I also deliver cultural responsiveness training for not-for-profit community service providers. That one is called CMCU. It's run by Multicultural Futures, whose office is just here, right at the in this building as well. And it has been a long journey until I came to this stage of the intercultural consultant. But when I was thinking, okay, what sort of title I'm going to put, I thought, okay, I've got to put the mother first there. And then migrant. For the migrant part, I was wondering, I've been in Australia for 17 years, and I was wondering, when can I actually remove that title, being the migrant? Is that something that I'm going to carry on for the rest of my life in Australia? Or is there any point that I can remove that title? I was just wondering last night, looking at my title, and an intercultural consultant. And first, let me talk about my mother part. I am a single mom with 3 children. My children were all born in Malaysia, between myself, Japanese, and Malaysian Chinese father. I and children migrated to Australia in 2006, when my eldest was 15 years old and my daughters were still in primary school. I still remember that day that we arrived. That was on the 23rd of December. We arrived at the Perth airport with huge suitcases, and then we went to this empty rented house. And we kind of camped there for the next 1 month. That's how our life in Perth started. And children were bored, I have to say. It was, 2 days before the Christmas, The neighborhood was very quiet. The people were doing their own things with their own families. And then we were there just by ourselves. We didn't know anyone here in Perth. So children were really bored. I still remember, and they kept on complaining, oh, what are we going to do? It's so bored. It's nothing to do here. That's what they kept on telling me. So they were looking forward to go to school very much. Yes, they were. They couldn't wait to go to school, meet other kids, and make friends. For me, I was exhausted. I was exhausted from that move that I made with the 3 children. And then trying to organize all sorts of things on my own. I was very tired. But we spent out 1 month and a bit just being ourselves, enjoying the space, many trips down to the beach. Was busy, just settling down. And then finally, the first day of the school came. Kids were going, yes, tomorrow we are going to school. I said, yeah, good. We went to see the school. We had seen the school before. And, everybody seemed really kind and open and friendly. And I think the children had this high hope as well. And a little information, maybe I better give it to you. My children back in Malaysia, they went to international school, Australian curriculum based. So they spoke English fluently with Australian accent, I must say. And then first they came, they went to school. I walked my 2 girls to the primary school. My son took a bike. He said, yes, so good, I can bike to school. And then he went to school. And then the school finished. I went to pick my girls, came home. After a little while, my son came back home. He quickly parked the bike and rushed into the house and went straight into the room. Something was amiss. I thought, oh, what's going on? What happened? Well, I prepared the snacks and I called them, I come and have some snacks. First day, your school, how did it go? They didn't say much. And then my son, later that night, after girls went to bed, my son started talking about his day. And then he said, well, I actually went around and then say hi to so many kids there. I said, yeah, that's good. Did you make some friends? And then he said, it didn't quite work that way, Mom. I said, really? What happened? And then he said, I think I'm Asian. That's what he said. He said, I think I'm Asian. It caught me off guard. I didn't expect him to say that. And then quite interestingly, for my selfish reasons, when I picked where to live, I came from Japan where I used to live very close to the coast. So I chose that suburb, which was quite close to the beach. And I also didn't realize there weren't many Asian kids in the school. Actually, like in the primary school, I could spot my 2 girls in the school field because those are the only 2 black heads. Put it simply. So anyway, that sentence, my son said, I'm Asian, Mom. I thought, oh, what had happened? And then he said, back in Malaysia at international school, there are Australian kids, Malay kids, Indian kids, Chinese kids, other kids from all over from the world. And then they were quietly, nicely all together, mixing around and playing together. And then I think he had not realized his national identity or ethnic identity. And when he came here, he said, yeah, as usual, I wanted to make friends. So I approached some of the kids and said, hey, hey. But he didn't get the response that he expected to get. And instead, some people mentioned, hey, Asian. And then that was the first time he actually realized, oh, wait a second, I am Asian. He was devastated. He was devastated. And then I was so sad about his first day. But then luckily, my son maybe inherited a little bit of optimism from me. So he said, next day, so are you going to go to school tomorrow? And he said, yeah, of course. Let me try and see how it goes with other kids, how they react. That's what he said. So the next day came, he went, came back with this long face again. And then days passed this way for quite some time. Few fights that he got into. Thinking back, I think he had to prove that he is no different but the same and similar to any other kids. And for being a boy, I think he had to go through some of the fights. He came back with few bruises and grazes a couple of times. But by the end of the school, year 12, he had a good group of friends. He managed. But that is something that I'm thinking, what could I do as mum while he was going through this? How could I prepare my kids to face this when they go out to the community? My talk, I am going to go through these topics: cultural transition, cultural learning, and my daughter is a writer, so I would like to share with you one of the pieces, the short passage that she wrote, reflecting her growing up years at school. And then in the end, supporting youth navigating across cultures. What needs to watch out from my experience as mum, and also as migrant, and also as an international consultant, taking into account of cultural differences. So first, little bit of thing. This is the stage of transition, culture shock in action. I do intercultural youth training. I deliver intercultural youth training as well. This job is assigned from the company in Europe, and they actually prepare the kids as young as 6 years old to learn about the cultural differences before they depart to different countries. And this is one of the tables that we use. We use it for adults and then for children as well. For children, I normally call this culture shock worm. So it is usually this curve that happens. Everybody goes through this process. Level of comfort on the left-hand side, the line, and then at the bottom is the time and place. So normally from the home culture, people come in from the original culture into a different culture. Before they go into a host culture, there is this excitement about the differences. Yeah, it's the same as the food. I mean, when we try to have a different type of food you have never had, you go, oh, shall I try this? Or how is it going to taste? So a little bit of experience, excitement towards a difference. And then when it is repeated, the people tend to feel a little bit of frustration or annoyance with everyday differences. So when I say differences, it's not something like huge. These are very subtle, tiny differences that we face day to day, like how people greet, how people smile at which occasions, the little things, very subtle. And then they'll get used to it, and then the feeling goes up and say, yeah, people are so friendly and smiling. I'm liking this. So that it goes up. And then that is the surface adjustment. On the surface level, people are quite okay, I'm comfortable. And then it comes down again. because people tend to be confronted with the deeper cultural, personal issues. And then the line comes down. And then after a while, and then it goes back again, because it will go to adaptation and acceptance, kind of getting used to, adapting other way of doing things. And then some research uses the word like assimilation or integration, but I am not really in favor of using the word assimilation, integration, because that is when we are talking about two different things, and then you have to move yourself from here to there, or from there to here. So I am more thinking about, it's more like adapting something good, giving something good, and then finding the common sense. So adaptation and acceptance. And then I must say, Australia is such a new country, and I totally believe that the culture is still in making, and even in other countries, culture never remains the same all the time. It is constantly evolving, but the changes takes place very slowly. And quickly, the culture learning. So what is culture learning then? So that was the culture shock wave going up and down. The cultural learning, it takes another different step in each, when people experience different cultural experiences. So first, you enter a new environment and mismatch with internal patterns. So we define culture as a complex pattern of behavior. This is the cultural neuroscience definition. Culture is actually the pattern of behavior which is shared by a relatively large group of people. So think about the dance. There are so many different types of dances in the world, yes? And then if I invite everyone from a different dance group and say, come, let's dance together. Can we all dance together? Tango, salsa, Japanese dance, African dance, the Brazilian dance. Maybe each group might find their little corner and then start dancing. But what we are trying to do is to come together and then find that shared rule book of how to dance. So that's culture. So enter a new environment and mismatch with internal patterns. And then goes to intuitive scanning. So we are not thinking. Subconsciously, we scan through and filters, and then we detect the difference. Oh, it's a bit different here. And then comes down to emotional response. This is all done by our brain automatically, beyond our control. An emotional response, and it alters the reflective mind and activate the interpretation. People start to interpret what it means. And personally, people start making sense of situation and reflective sorting and analyze. And then goes to deciding time. Okay, what am I going to do now? Do I do the same? Or I don't want to do it. Ignore. The simple example is like smiling. Yes, a lot of people find when we arrive in Australia, find that, oh, Australian people are very smiling, appear to be very friendly. I like that. So that's coming to an intuitive scanning, detect difference. Yeah, they seem to smile much more than me. I'm liking this. Maybe I'll do that too. And then make a decision. But actually that yellow bit, suppress response, take action, and then goes down to ignore, judge, resist, adapt, and change intuitive responses. When the newcomer come to Australia, or when the people are trying to that new culturally orientated behavior, they need to get a good response, because otherwise they will be discouraged to do so. That yellow bit and then the arrow is the crucial part in the cultural learning. Because they may find it, yeah, smiling is good. I think I'm going to adopt that cultural behavior here. But then if they encounter a negative response to that, it will discourage them from adapting. So this is, everybody go through this. Let me read this. This is the recollection. My daughter is a writer, and then she wrote this piece some time ago, in 2020. And it may reflect, I think she was in her early 20s, and it may reflect how the young people may be feeling, experiencing different cultures. So I'm going to just read this. So Yoshika's piece, Recollection, is a creative nonfiction piece that delves into race, identity, centered around 3 memories. She recollected during the height of pandemic and spurred by the conversation of the Black Lives Matter movement at that time. And her memories are from primary and secondary school. A casual remark from a friend, waiting for her name to be called during the roll call, and painting herself portrait in art class, trying to mix that different color to make her skin color. And the end of her story goes like this, the summary. Isn't it strange that you don't always realize how you are feeling or how you are affected in the moment when something happens? Although seemingly small and born out of ignorance and innocence, these incidents at their time and circumstance made me falter and doubt who I was. Unbeknownst to my teen self, it was disconnections and isolation I felt. I remembered these sentences that came out of the mouth of teachers and school friends. It made me doubt my own identity. These sentences stressed that for some reason, I needed to validate my Asianness, validate what I looked like, who I was. Recollecting these memories and processing them reaffirmed that regardless of how oblivious you are to it, society works in ways that are at times hurtful. What they teach you at school is not absolute, and seemingly ordinary comments and perceptions can be baseless, ignorant, and inadvertently hurtful. Although I wish it would come quicker at certain times, realization is an exceptional thing. It helps to process some sense of what has happened. Recollecting and processing these events have reiterated that I'm the only one who can say I am this or that. It has reminded me that I love my name, and those that, I love my name. So that was the conclusion of her recollection that she wrote after going through the school years, reflecting what had happened in her days. And I didn't know that she wrote this. And then when I read, I thought, wow, there was so much she was thinking of. What have I done as mom? Children and young people are very adaptive. It's so easy to say. And then I thought, oh, really? Perhaps as an adult or a member of the community or as a service provider, maybe they may be very adaptive, so-called, so we say, but they need support in the form of guidance, direction, understanding, love, trust, respect to navigate the complexity of various cultures while growing up and learning together. As an adult, I think there's so much we can actually learn with the youth. Managing transitions. There are some of the things, transition coping skills are listed. This is from, the source is from Hobson and Scully in 1980 published, and also WA-based researcher Christine Hogan has added a few things. One is knowing yourself and knowing the new situation, knowing others who can help. Oh, by the way, these points, topics are included in cultural transition workshop. And looking after yourself, leaving the past behind for now, looking for the gains or benefits, learn to transfer skills, knowledge to the new situation, and learning to be a cultural detective, cultural interpreter. And these are the points normally that we cover in the intercultural youth training before they enter a new environment. And as mom, my learning from experiences being a mom and being a youth intercultural trainer, my learning is these 3 points. One, make time. We need to make time and allocate time to discuss and acknowledge cultural differences and explore ways to interact cross-culturally. Prepare before they step into the cultural diversity. Also, appreciate the similarities. There are so many similarities as well in our environment. Point that out, express with words, and appreciate that similarities. And then lastly, transitioning, intercultural workshop, coaching, mentoring, forum, talk like this, events, make the transitioning process less stressful, tolerable, and perhaps more enjoyable. So we need to work together and we need to have that integrated approach. They're not doing it by themselves. We need to involve members of the community, the parents, all together. We need to work together. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rika. I'm sure we can all benefit from your personal and professional knowledge on the topic, so thanks. So our next speaker for today is Bellamore Ndeyakizi. She is a youth family domestic violence advocate and educator. Bellamore was born in war-torn Burundi. She is a remarkable advocate for youth, driven by determination and a passion for change. She overcame obstacles to establish herself in Australia, tirelessly working for healing and opportunities for young people in WA. As the former chair of the Youth Ministerial Advisory Council, she influenced policy making and amplified youth voices as the WA Youth Week ambassador. Bella's commitment to personal growth, seen through leadership programs, makes her a sought-after advisor for government departments and local communities. She's a talented artist with over 60 songs reflecting her journey and a versatile AFL athlete and coach. Her transformative journey from adversity to influence is a testament to perseverance and passion, inspiring countless lives. And she is joining us today on Teams, so I'm just going to get her up.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Yeah, thank you for having me here. I have COVID and yeah, got to go online. It's a great privilege to be speaking with you all. Today, I just want to take a moment to salute the remarkable strength and unwavering resilience of parents, especially mothers, their relentless dedication to build a better life for their children. Despite all odds, it is truly commendable the sacrifice, tears, and the uphill battles they have faced while settling in a foreign land, and nothing short of beautiful. It is the spirit that fuels the work at Ishar. And to all the mothers here today, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Kaden. She had a baby not long ago. I say thank you on behalf of the Ishar youth team. So I will take on the perspective of just sharing more about my insight on young people particularly those from a refugee background. So, about me. I'm 27 years old, who came to Australia from a refugee camp about 17 years ago. So I was about 10. The reason I greatly admire mothers is because of a story my own mother tells me whenever I feel lost. When I was 5 years old, we lived in a refugee camp in a big house surrounded by corn and vegetables. My mother, a dedicated UNHCR worker and a teacher, was highly respected in our village. On days I didn't go to school, I would sneak food from the kitchen and share it with my little friends in the neighborhood, finding immense joy in their happiness. The workers in our house grew concerned and called my mom from work, but instead of scolding me, my mom picked up a couple of extra shifts and worked at another job and was a teacher full time. I don't know how she did it because she had 4 other kids. And we had more food, surprisingly. And this allowed me to continue being the child who was raised by amazing parents who taught me to value the value of giving others. The reason I share this story, of course, is because I think about who I am and my cultural identity. And that story paints a picture of a child who wasn't selfish, who cared for others. And that's what I've grown with. And my mother to this day still works extra hard so that we, as her children, have the best we can have. I'm the oldest of 10 children, with 5 of them being my mothers and the others my stepmothers. Growing up, I quickly learned the meaning of responsibility. Being the eldest, especially as a girl, brought its own set of expectations. It was a cultural norm and unspoken duty, and I embraced it. I took care of my family because I had to. And in doing so, I discovered a strength within me that I never knew existed. I hope my story can inspire others to face their challenges head on and find their own hidden strengths. I'm the person behind Ishar Youth Service. When a young woman walks in through our doors or referred to us, they meet me and I'm there to listen and understand their needs most often. These young people are going through tough times dealing with family and domestic violence or struggling with their mental health. My role isn't about fixing their problems, it's about empowering them to overcome their challenges and find their own solutions. So, how did we get here? Let me just start by saying that the migration story unveils a profound connection between mental resilience and the challenges that come with it. When one dives into the lives of children and youth, it becomes very clear that their mental well-being is intrinsically linked to their parents' mental health. The path to a child's well-being is paved by parents who stand together, nurturing healthy relationships on all fronts and ensuring that the child's needs are met, basic needs in most instances. In a world where many families face economic challenges, their ability to be the best parents can be hindered. And I want to acknowledge this because it is a tough time. Priorities shift, and love is often expressed through material necessities. The consequence of this can be significant as children grow up. And this is where I find myself, unfortunately, and many young people that I work with. However, in the face of these challenges, we must be very clear when working with people that there is a huge difference between people who are in Australia as refugees or seeking asylum and people who are in Australia for economic reasons. So what have I learned working with young people the past 13 years? Because I started off as an AFL coach, and throughout my career, I've mentored over thousands of young people. Just this morning, I was granted a scholarship to launch my company, which is really about continuing the work I've been doing. So my observations are this. From a cultural perspective, one can discern the difference between young people who arrive in this country after spending a significant time of their childhood in their native land or in the refugee camps, and those who are born or raised here from a very tender age. So for me, I came here when I was about 10. And my experiences are very nuanced to my siblings who grew up in this country. This contrast, of course, serves as a testament to the profound impacts on one's early experiences, on their identity and perspective. This, of course, can bring discourse in a family dynamic and priorities, and such as, raising children based on what one knows. And this is usually through the lens of the parental cultural upbringing. So our parents, in short, what I'm saying is our parents raise children based on what they know, because let's say 90% of their life has been spent in a different environment. And I hope that kind of like answers a little bit of the person who asked that question. And digging deeper, working here at Ishar, and in various roles that I've held, such as being a youth ambassador and chairing the Youth Ministerial Advisory Council, I've seen I've got a strategic perspective in understanding the nuanced needs of the communities that I've been in. I've traveled heaps. I was in America. I've gone to different parts of the world, and I can tell you that in Australia, it's very uniquely different. And I guess a lot of it is because of the culture of Australia. I've had the privilege of working with both young groups of people, so the economic migrants as well as refugees, and these two experiences are very different. It's a fascinating experience, and I believe there's still much to be understood about this area, primarily due to the lack of extensive research. To truly grasp the dynamics of these two groups, one must approach the study of economic migrants and refugees separately. The key differences between the two lies in circumstances and reasons for their journey to Australia. Economic migrants come here for education, work, or tourism and other means, while refugees and asylum seekers are driven by pressing need for protection and safety. Often the fear they carry is overwhelming, and that can be paralyzing, particularly on parents, making it challenging for them to integrate economically until their mental health is addressed. And this is why I was saying, until the parents are truly well, kids usually follow the same journey as the parents. Moreover, the developmental trajectory of refugee children is heavily influenced by their parents' progress in healing. The extent to which parents can rebuild their lives significantly impacts their children's development and ability to adapt. And that goes for young teenagers and young people up to 25 and onwards. It is a complex puzzle that requires empathy, understanding, and most importantly, the recognition that there's much more to learn and discover in this field. Understanding the nuanced difference between these two worlds is crucial. Growing up in our traditional culture, I've witnessed how it provides stability for one's cultural identity. But for those who, like others who, grew up in Australia, didn't have the privilege of growing up in our homeland for a very long time, in a place like Australia, the battle to reconcile our heritage with the culture we're immensely in can be tricky and hard. The difference between what our parents know and what we are experiencing is evident. Our parents have spent their lives in a particular environment, and understandably, they tend to implement what they've learned there, as I've said earlier. Take the example of disciplining a child. It is typical that, you smack a child and that's the way, practices like that, unfortunately, are not really accepted here. And it is sad, as a result, parents find themselves struggling to adapt learning strategies of parenting without much choice in the matter. This struggle can lead to significant issues. It is not just the parents who are affected. Young people like me may also take advantage of the situation. Once we learn about these differences, I've seen in many instances where young individuals have called the police or child protection services on their own parents for disciplinary actions that are considered acceptable back in their home country, but deemed inappropriate in the current environment of Australia. So I have, let's say, a few solutions. Issues, it's not like a lot of us don't understand it fully, but here are my, there's many solutions, but here are my top solutions. If I'm committed to embracing Australian values, for those of you who do not know the Australian values like freedom, respect, fairness, and equality of opportunity, I realize that the well-being of our young people and their mental health can't be separated from the role of parents. It is a reminder that in our pursuit for a better society, we must always strive for unity, empathy, and support for one another, as family plays an integral part in shaping the future we all ideally want. Okay, that's the point number one. Point number two, I strongly believe that as a society, we must prioritize the value of family once again. In Australia, family dynamics seems to be very scattered in all directions. And it's really sad, and this can be concerning when it comes to nurturing family values. It is essential to recognize that children need strong and healthy family environment to flourish and develop into responsible, well-rounded individuals in our community. Let's come together and rekindle the significance of family in our lives, for it is the cornerstone of a better future for our children and our society. And it's not just about the family, it's about the community and about everybody in our society wide, our services, governments, everybody has to be involved, because we come from a collectivist environment that says it takes a village to raise a child. You come to Australia, you have your own room, everything is very individualistic, and that's not really helped our society. We're spending way too much money, in taxpayers' money, addressing the individual needs instead of like focusing on the collective efforts. And most of the time, actually, that starts at home. Number three, I wholeheartedly believe that we should never attempt to fix the problems of others or offer advice if we're not willing to fully commit to doing the same in our own lives. It is a philosophy I hold dear. There is a well-known saying that resonates with this principle. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So for parents and service providers, it is essential to remember that simply handing solutions to someone isn't a sustainable approach. Instead, we should focus on listening and empowering people through education and support. We must encourage young people to take ownership of their own lives, which includes their stories, decisions, and even their mistakes. It is through these experiences that they truly learn and grow. Number 5, I think this is my last point. I believe in the power of a wraparound approach when it comes to supporting our young people. We as a society need to embrace our cultural diversity and view it as a strength rather than a challenge. And there's many experiences that speak to that statement that I've just made. And that's why racism and discrimination still exists. It is time for our schools, not-for-profits, organizations, and governments to actively encourage positive cultural awareness and involvement. We are so fortunate to live in a multicultural society, and we can't run away from that, unfortunately. But we often don't realize the full potential of this richness. It is time to strengthen our cultural bonds and celebrate our differences and to learn from one another. So let us unite and create a more inclusive, understanding, and harmonious world where every individual, including parents and young people of cultural background, is not just accepted, but celebrated. And I say that because the biggest issue that is facing us today is the identity crisis. You know, young people are confused, they are lost, they don't know what to do. And that starts in the home. If we're not role modeling that in everything we're doing ourselves, then we're going to keep having these conversations. But I appreciate all of you listening. I know I made it very broad, but that's what I had to say in regards to this particular topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bella. You've given us a lot of food for thought, so please stay online because we are going to have a moment at the end to ask questions. We're going to take a 5-minute break, if that's okay. So there is tea, coffee, I believe, and some snacks just on the side of there, so feel free to just pick something up, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you everyone for coming back. Feel free to carry on eating. We're going to continue and move on to our lived experience speakers. First up, we have Diane Dashim.
Hi everybody, it is so lovely to see you all. Yeah, I'll just get into it. I'll first start off by explaining my first encounters, when we first arrived in Australia. So my first morning, I woke up to the sounds of crows, and that's when I realized, I'm no longer in my country. It was really, really cold, and that was something that I had never been used to, because obviously I come from a place called Burundi, and I was born in Tanzania, and usually the weather there is usually just humid or like hot. And so the cold weather for me was something new, and it took a while to get used to. When we arrived in Australia, there was 9 of us, 4 girls and 3 boys. The first 2 years, there was a lot of community visitation and church events. Personally, I don't remember as much because I was 5 when we arrived in Australia. In grade 4, I recall my mother crying on a regular basis. And later on, I came to find that it was because she was struggling to, adapt to everything, from constantly seeking, help from community members for her to kind of get certain things done. Back home, my mom was very independent. It was very hard for me to see her ask for help, within the community, because she always had her own business happening. She would constantly make little things called mandazis. Here they're kind of known as like little donuts, and you can have them with tea for breakfast, or even just when you feel like you want to kind of fill up from your lunch, you just have a snack. And that was like a really nice delicacy that we could enjoy when we arrived in Australia. Fast forward to teenagehood, before I can actually get into that, I want to first kind of talk about the losses my parents had. So my parents lost three children back home, one being poisoned by a neighbor, another obviously just dying from when they were a baby, so I think it was from SIDS, and one from war. The only one that I knew was the one that was poisoned by a neighbor. I remember a time where we visited our neighbor's house because we were close with her child, and while we were visiting, I recall my youngest sibling was crawling, and upon crawling, the neighbor gave her something, and we returned home, and then the next night, she just wasn't found. She was found unresponsive and wasn't breathing. And so that was a tough time for me, having to remember that, because I was, I think, 2 when that happened. Fast forward to me, starting high school, I made quite a few friends from all walks of life. And with me constantly wanting to hang out after school and seeing them during weekends, it became really hard for mom and dad because of the trauma that they had gone through. And so with that, it resulted to me having to always beg to go and visit friends, or even allow them to come over, because there was just a lot of mistrust and just a lot of just different cultural backgrounds that they were from that mom and dad were not used to. We were not allowed sleepovers. We weren't allowed to actually go out and visit people without mom and dad knowing the family. And so that became really, really hard for myself and my other sisters. Later in life, I'm not gonna lie, I became really rebellious because I wanted to go out, and I found myself missing out on a lot of weekend activities that my friends had been up to. And so every time I would go to school, I would hear about all the fun activities that they did, and that made me feel like, oh, I'm missing out on a lot. having to always play catch up whenever, we would hang out in school. Essentially, I just felt isolated from the outside world when in school. One thing that I would like to address prior to me continuing on, anytime I would rebel or my siblings would rebel, there were certain discipline that here in Australia wouldn't really be classified as discipline. So to me, I want to put it out there as harsh discipline. So growing up, anytime we would either disagree with mom or dad, or we would sneak out to see a friend, we would come back and obviously receive that discipline. And to me, that affected my mental health. It also affected the way I responded to mom. And through that, I just became disengaged in family, traditions, family conversations, or whenever they would have lunch or dinner together, I would just kind of isolate myself because I just felt like I wasn't understood. I felt like anything I did was just a straight no. Anytime my friends would come over, I remember my mom saying that, I don't like the way they dress. They're wearing shorts, that's not in our tradition. Religiously, it is wrong for a girl to come into a home knowing that her knees are showing. That was a big no-no for us. And so I found that really hard to even bring people over for, just for the comfort of them understanding my family and obviously where I came from. So it got to a point where I was just doing most of the sneaking out just to see them. And that became really, really hard. In the results of me sneaking out and doing things that my parents never agreed with, it kind of resulted in my relationship with them declining. And it also impacted the way I interacted with my siblings. Because they were a bit older than me, they just kind of got used to the way mum and dad raised us. And for me, being the young one, it just didn't work for me because obviously the Australian culture is all about, meeting friends, catching up, and, doing certain activities that that's not always within the household. Fast forward to the year I graduated, 2015. Obviously my friends had moved forward and decided to, go on a summer vacation. I think back then it was more of like a after high school, little holiday. I asked my parents if I could go, and obviously that was a big no. And in the result of that, it kind of just made me feel like, okay, I've graduated, my friends are having fun, I am now stuck to just pretty much do nothing, just be home, go to school, come back, and obviously just do house chores. At first, I was okay with that, but then I think after 6 months of constantly listening to my parents and trying to do my best to respect them, it became difficult because I started to experience anxiety. I started to experience that lack of connection with people because anytime I would go to church, I just found it hard to formulate a sentence to anybody. So that became really, really hard for me. I remember this day clearly. It was on the 17th of December, 2016. My older brother had moved out, and upon moving out, obviously his room was free. At the time, I was sharing rooms with my older sister, and I decided, okay, we're constantly arguing about, who took whose clothes, who took whose makeup. It was just getting ridiculous. I was like, okay, let me just move into that room, and then I'll explain it to mom and dad later. And so I moved my stuff in, got myself comfortable. They came back home, and they were like, oh, where's Dion? And I was just like, oh, I'm here. Came out, told them, I was like, look, I'm moving out. I'm moving into Claude's room. That was my brother's name. And I feel like it's best for me and my sister because we're constantly fighting. To them, that was the biggest mistake that I had done at the time because obviously they didn't trust me, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really give them much much to give them in terms of trust, because I always like did my own thing due to me rebelling. Fast forward, a discipline happened, and it was a whole situation where we went back and forth yelling. And I remember my mom saying, seems like the government was teaching you and raising you better than I am. You might as well move out if you think you're old enough. And so I heard that, and out of frustration, I was just like, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much for raising me. I'm going. And so I packed my stuff, called an Uber, and the Uber was waiting. Something happened where I was pulled, and it was just a whole big thing. The police were involved. They came, took me, and from that day, I ended up going into community housing. Moving forward, I found a organization by the name of Foyer Oxford, who took me in with the help of a caseworker from Mercy Care. And they pretty much helped me adjust to, living on my own, and just finding balance in, being an independent person, but at the same time remembering that I have family who love me and support me. It took me and my mom a while to rekindle our relationship, but upon me constantly visiting and reassuring them that I'm alive, that I'm doing really well, our relationship started to grow. I then pursued a diploma in beauty therapy. At first, my mom was just like, that's a waste of your time. It's not really going to get you anywhere. I don't see the point of you doing it. But I was persistent. I did it, and I finished it. And moving forward, I ended up starting my own home little business. I started doing people's makeup. I loved it. But then again, my mom would constantly be telling me that it's not going to get you far. There's no point of you pursuing it. You better go to university, become a nurse like your sister, or do something that is going to benefit you in the future. And so that really put me down, that it resulted to me kind of stopping a little bit and just doing my own thing. And I think that was the time where I just started like hanging out with the wrong type of crowd, and it affected me like emotionally, and honestly, it became a whole situation. When I turned 20, I kind of just looked at myself and I said, Diane, is this the life you want to live? Like, do you see yourself constantly just going out knowing you don't have a plan, you don't have a future waiting for you? Like, what do you want to do from here? So then I enrolled in ECU and decided, okay, I've gone through a traumatic experience. I don't have a great relationship with my parents. What can I do to kind of fix that, but at the same time uplift myself? I enrolled in ECU and started studying youth work. The main reason to me studying youth work wasn't because, I just wanted to get into university. I really thought hard on it, and I said, I want to uplift women or girls who are in a household where they don't feel understood, they don't feel like they have anywhere to go, that their parents are just stemming them from that social life, and like being able to see their full self grow. So I pursued that, and something great actually happened through that. I ended up having my first child at 21 with my current partner. And obviously in my culture, having a child outside of marriage was a big no. And so it became really difficult for, I think, my dad to really grasp on that. And so me visiting my parents or like seeing my siblings in public became very shameful for me, because there'll be obviously community members saying, oh, this is what she's turned out to be. She's no longer having a future. She just, did whatever she wanted, and that was it. And so that really affected me, mentally, physically, and whatever you can really think of. Sorry. And anyways, moving forward, I had a chat with Mom, and I just said, look, I am sorry for not, for not waiting to get married before having a child. She just grasped me, and she said, I love you. I haven't been great. I haven't done all that it is, I haven't done all the necessary steps to ensure that you were able to find your place in Australia, that you were unable to find your place in my community. I want you to remember that I'm your mother and I'm here to support you. And then from there on, our relationship started blossoming. And then I ended up getting married. And through that marriage, another child came. And then through, whilst pregnant with my second child, I gravitated closer to working as a youth worker. Studying as a youth worker, which pretty much led me to where I am today. My biggest message from all this really is, I've realized community members from my country tend to not really understand that when you move to Australia, there's certain things in place, there's certain things that you need to put in place for your child to actually, be able to grasp on the cultural side of things, and also being able to gravitate towards the Australian society. I, however, did not really get the right kind of guidance in order for me to, assimilate to the Australian culture. I was just pretty much let down. I was pretty much constantly told no, rather without reason. And so obviously with the mistakes that I made, I found ways to kind of correct that, and I found ways to be like, okay, this happened, but at the same time, I am able to, I'm able to move forward and able to think positively through certain experiences that I've gone through. And that's pretty much me for today, and I'm sorry. I don't know if I went over time, but yeah.
Thank you, Diane. It was very inspiring listening to your lived experience, especially considering that you mentioned your anxiety and how it was once difficult for you to speak up, but it's really important that we hear stories like yours, so thank you. And thanks again, everyone. Thank you to the audience for participating. We do have a QR code up, just if you could just take a couple of minutes to provide your feedback. I guess a couple of lessons from today is there is good in culture, and I think it's important for us to hold on to that, especially for the generations after us, and I guess just finding our own way to do that. And then also from a professional, I guess, service provider perspective, it's clear that a lot of the work is being done from the ground up. So I think we just need to take part in more advocacy work to make sure that it's also coming from the top down as well, and that we're all working in partnership to make sure that we're able to celebrate culture and keep it alive, because the consequences of us, and especially young people who are going through that identity crisis and confusion on a day-to-day basis, might I add, I think the consequences of them actually losing their culture is probably more severe. So I hope you've all learned something from today, and thank you again for everyone for taking the time out to come and join us. Thank you.